All right, welcome back in, you guys, to another One Piece video. Today, we're here to talk about, to break down and to theorize around chapter 1157, which is titled The Legendary Bar, or as I like to call it, the most hated chapter in 2025. That is right. As somebody who can see the back-end YouTube analytics, and as somebody who's made about 3 to 4 videos about this chapter already, I saw the negative comments. This chapter has left people somewhat divided, which we'll get into later. But before we get to the most controversial part of this chapter, we do have to start from the very beginning. And that is with the Yamato cover page story. Yes, that is right. After 4 weeks, we are finally continuing this saga. And I just know you guys are excited for this one. So, jokes aside, I will admit that this is the most entertaining and the most talked about the cover page story has ever been. And that is because we have a mystery on our hands. We left off with this unmarked grave, the gravesite of a man who was born in the West Blue and was later raised in Ringo. And this week, we actually do not get the name of who this gravesite belongs to, but instead we got more details surrounding them. We learn that apparently they defended a Wano village, the Ringo village, from Kaido, and they were pretty much eviscerated. They were blown to bits, so much so that there's no recoverable body here. It's just the gravesite. So, based off of this, we can eliminate Ryuma from the equation, because we now have somewhat of a definitive timeline, right? Because Kaido's only been in Wano for about 20, 25-ish years now. So no, it cannot be anybody from the Void Century. It can't be anybody from the past. We're talking about current day, baby. Well, current era. Current day would exclude so many more people. But yes, as far as who this gravesite belongs to, I do want to retouch on all of the old theories now that we have eliminated Ryuma, because I do think one of those options holds more credence. Is it credence? 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 I can never get that word right. But my main pick right now, as of 1157, is that this site belongs to Kyowo, Silverax, the man who right now, in this flashback, is a part of the Rocks crew. So you might be saying, Sai, why Kyowo? He doesn't make any sense to be here. Well, it's funny because him and Shiki, this is gonna get a little bit racy, they seem like Wano citizens, all right? First up, we have the name, right? Shiki is Japanese for lion, Kyowo, Silverax, like, it's kind of there, right? And in One Piece, we do know that these cultural differences do matter, right? Dressrosa is obviously modeled after Spain, Alabasta, we could talk about that as well. And with Wano, it is more Japanesey than your average island. So the fact that they have those names right away just rings bells in my mind. And not just that, but they also have kimonos on, right? They're one of the few characters outside of Wano citizens who actually wear kimonos. So right then and there, a lot of people did connect them to this gravesite. Shiki doesn't make sense because we have the whole, film Strong World thing, which isn't canon, but people like to bring that up. So it's like, okay, if it's not Shiki, then Silverax is looking pretty decent. And the thing with Silverax too, we'll talk about this more later, but I think he might be a rat. I think Silverax might be a good guy, deep down. And what's funny about this gravesite as well is that you see this pole sticking up. And it's like, okay, like I've seen graves like this before, right? You have this stick, and then you have their first name, last name, their dates and everything inscribed on this stick. But another way you could look at it is that this is actually Silverax's axe. So if you go back to the last chapter, Silverax obviously has a giant axe on his back, and it's like, okay, like, it kind of looks like this, but then again, what wooden stick doesn't? So I'm like, okay, like, I think this could just be Silverax. Maybe he defended Wano from Kaido because he knew that Kaido was running amok here, and then Kaido blew this guy to bits because, obviously, they were on opposing teams. Another thing I found kind of interesting is that in the background, you can see that Ulti in page 1 actually made a snowman of Kaido that is staring at this grave. I don't know why they did that. First up, I'm like, okay, that's kind of bad manners, right? Imagine going to a gravesite and putting their killer as a snowman right in front of it. That right there seems a little bit absurd, but if you go back to the fact that Kyoto and Kaido would know each other, then maybe it's a more respectful thing. Maybe they did fight, and of course Kaido killed him, but at the same time, it was a respectable 1v1. I could see that being the case. Of course, that is my own headcanon. As far as Shiki goes, I feel like a lot of people in the Shiki camp have kind of died down after the most recent couple of chapters. And aside from that, the only real option I've seen is Ushimaru, which is the blue-haired samurai that Yamato saw in the cave. And that's also Zoro's, I think, lost uncle or something like that. But yes, Ushimaru Shimotsuki is a pretty valid candidate because he was in Ringo. He was the daimyo of Ringo, so it makes sense. The part about Ushimaru that doesn't make sense, though, is that we don't really know if he was born in the West Blue. Considering the fact that he is a Shimotsuki, you would assume that he was born and raised in Wano. So that right there doesn't exactly fit the bill, yet. And another thing about Ushimaru that doesn't fit this is that we learned that apparently this guy died protecting the village. Ushimaru did not die protecting a village, right? He died protecting all of Wano, right? He was imprisoned, he broke out, he fought Kaido, and he died. So I don't know if that would exactly fit this. I personally wouldn't word Ushimaru's death like this in this chapter, so I'm kind of hung up on that. And now the last candidate we have to talk about is Jigoro, the Zoro zombie from Thriller Bark. The reason this guy gets brought up, you might be wondering why, like, who brings up Jigoro? Well, it's because we know that he was most likely a Wano citizen because of his name, and he's one of the few characters that we know of that actually came from the West Blue. So he could have been born in the West Blue, raised in Ringo. That is why he has the name Jigoro. As far as his body goes, maybe the body did not get eviscerated by Kaido. Instead, maybe the body is missing because Moria stole it out of its gravesite. Or maybe Moria was nearby, he saw Jigoro go down, and he simply took his body and put it on the ship, and everybody just suspected that Jigoro was destroyed by Kaido. So I could see that being the case. So right now, my number one candidate is still Kyoto. Number 2 would go to Jigoro, and number 3, Ushimaru. But that right there is just my opinion, and I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this. Who do you think this gravesite actually belongs to? So now, moving on to the first page of the chapter, we cut over to the Foot Colony. The Foot Colony, huh? I wonder what they do over there. What do they specialize in, guys? Let me know down below. We see that the Rocks pirates have successfully invaded this country and have stolen their donations and treasures that was supposed to go to poor kids. Turns out that's all a lie. The guy himself admits it. Like, yeah, they're just hoarding this money for themselves. They had no altruistic value in their body. So we don't have to lose sleep over the Rocks pirates plundering all the loot. What's funny about this whole thing, though, is that apparently they are all underground, right? The Rocks pirates are running underground, and they're like, oh man, we really need to take the lift to get out of here. Shiki, throw it down, right? Throw your rope down here. Shiki instead says, oh wait, I have an idea. And instead of bringing down the elevator or, dropping his rope, he drops a fat bomb instead, which I did find pretty hilarious, and it makes sense for this pirate group too, right? Considering they're all ragtag captains in their own right. And not just that, but when you think about how they got here via Davy Back fights, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of bad blood between these characters. We go on, and we see that because they cannot rely on Shiki to drop down the elevator, they have to go through the doorway instead. And they're like, oh man, they're dropping these iron bars. Big Mom says, I'll take care of it. And instead, Whitebeard comes in to steal the show. Whitebeard whips out his Gura Gura no Mi, and he starts tilting the sea level and tectonic plates. This guy is nuts. And this is a massive confirmation, by the way, because we didn't really know if Whitebeard had his Devil Fruit in this flashback, or if he got his Devil Fruit after God Valley. That has been a pretty main talking point, I would say, for the past year or two. So right here, we do have confirmation that Whitebeard indeed was the Earthquake Man while a part of Rocks' gang. Kaido says, I'm a little bit jealous of those powers you have, Whitebeard. And it's like, damn, Kaido was jealous of a Devil Fruit? Isn't this the guy who said that Haki surpasses all? Like, what happened to that rhetoric? Right, and that's why I always think it's so funny that Kaido said that to Luffy, right? Like, hey, Luffy, you know, devil fruits can only take you so far. Haki is what transcends all. While he's a mythical Azure dragon. It's like, yeah, I agree with you, Kaido, but you gotta admit, the devil fruits do boost you up a good level, right? So Whitebeard says, hey, Kaido, be careful with what you eat because, of course, it will follow you for the rest of your life. Which is nice words, you know. Whitebeard kind of feels like a big brother in this sense. Which I really wish we had, like, this old version of Whitebeard and Kaido talking to each other. Because I do wonder how that would go down present day if Whitebeard was still around. Rest in peace, though, Whitebeard. The next thing we see is that the Navy has actually shown up to arrest the Rocks pirates. Whitebeard is like, huh, how'd they get here so quickly? And why are there so many of them? Did someone leak intel? Yeah, that is right, you guys. Not only do the Rocks crew not play well together, but there's apparently a mole within their ranks. Should have seen it coming, right? When you consider the fact that a lot of people here kind of want to do their own thing, it's like, yeah, I'd like to assume there's at least one or two characters among the Rocks pirates that just wants to get the hell out of here. They want Rocks to go down so that they can go along with their merry journey. So as far as who the rat may be, I definitely lean towards some of the newer characters we have just met. Like, I don't think it's Whitebeard. I think Whitebeard would be a crazy pick, considering he's the one who brought up the rat in the first place. Like, imagine that, right? It's like whenever somebody calls in a crime that they've committed, like, yeah, you know, somebody killed this guy, I don't know who it is, as they're, like, holding the knife. It's like, okay, I don't think it's Whitebeard, and he seems too honorable to do that. Shiki, little bit of a scumbag, but I also don't think it would be Shiki as well. And if it was Shiki, I feel like he'd get special treatment and not get sent to Impel Down ASAP after the Ed War. Not just that, but I don't think it's Big Mom either. I don't think it's Kaido. Like, it being the old guard just feels weird in my mind. So instead, when I think about the Traitor, I do err more towards your Captain Johns, your Kyoos, maybe even your Barbells or Don Marlones, which Don Marlone is an interesting one because current day, Capone joined the Big Mom Pirates as one of her sons, and he even went as far as to marry Chiffon. And he still betrayed Big Mom. So it's like, yeah, like I could see Don Marlone being the same as Capone there. Another pretty viable candidate would be Stussy, which Stussy I would consider the older guard, like we've known about her before coming to this flashback. Stussy, right? Current day, she is a double, triple agent for the world government and Vegapunk. So I think it would make sense if the old Miss Buckingham Stussy was also a mole. But the reason I don't really put a lot of onus on it being Stussy is because Whitebeard is a part of the crew. Right? Because she loves Whitebeard so much, I can't see her potentially putting Whitebeard in harm's way. So that's why I'm kind of iffy on her right now. Another prominent character I want to talk about that it could be would be Kyoto, Silverax, right? You know, I did say that I think it is his grave we're looking at in the cover page story, and I think this could help build that narrative, right? Kyoto could be a really good guy disguised as a villain, and that's why he went to Wano, fought Kaido to save Wano, and he died protecting it. Kyoto, of course, is kind of a weird one, and that's because he is one of the few Rocks Pirates members that did not join the crew via Davy Back fight, so he doesn't have that whole, oh, I have to respect Rocks D Xebec no matter what, I have to follow him no matter what. No, he joined this crew willingly, and he joined knowing that his rival, the Golden Lion Shiki, is here. The one guy that he apparently hates the most in this world is a part of this crew. So I do think the Marines showing up here could be beneficial towards his ambition, right? If he just wants to take down Shiki and he can't do it by himself, maybe that's why he would want to involve the Marines. But yeah, Kyoto is one guy I do kind of like to put here. If I had to rank it, I'd say Don Marlone number 1, Silverax number 2, and then I'd put Stussy at number 3. But that's just my guess. What do you guys have to say about that? Who do you think the traitor among the Rocks Pirates is? Or do you think Whitebeard is just waffling and there's no traitor at all? I'd like to hear those thoughts. Oh, damn. One thing I forgot to talk about earlier is the fact that Shiki, just like Whitebeard, also has his devil fruit in this chapter. Brother, Shiki's devil fruit, the float no mi, not only was it kind of muddied because of film Strong World, but a lot of people also thought that Shiki, if he had that devil fruit, that he would have eaten it at God Valley. Turns out that's not the case. You know, Shiki, just like Whitebeard, had already eaten the fruit prior or during his journey with the Rocks crew. Pretty big stuff, for Shiki especially, because his devil fruit, like, it's so odd, because we never once saw him use this devil fruit in the canon story. It's only in the movies. And Oda, I think 2 to 3 volumes ago, he talked about Shiki having this devil fruit, and he's like, yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of him having the float no mi. It's a little bit too good, but because movie Shiki has it, I feel the need to bring it into the canon story as well. So it kind of felt like Oda had his hands tied with this one, but yeah, here we have it. Shiki is doing his float thing. Kind of funny thinking about God Valley now, because the Gura no Mi and the float no mi, those are really big candidates for the treasure chests. But now that we've eliminated those 2 theories, what devil fruits were in the chests? You know, that opens up more slots. The treasures at God Valley, brother, what could they potentially be? And who ate those fruits? And what's funny to think about is that there is a chance that those chests didn't even contain a bunch of devil fruits, right? Ginny said that there's some there, but that doesn't mean that all the chests had fruits in them. You know, for all we know, some of them could really just have some money in there, or, you know, something silly. We go on, and we get the Rocks crew rundown. And I'm just going to read this verbatim because it's a lot of information, and it's just absurd hype. In a mere 2 years since their formation, the record of the Rocks crew spoke for itself. 16 undocumented raids, 76 sunken ships, 14 ports reduced to ash, 5 towns wiped off the map, 1 nation brought to ruin, 3 unprecedented violations of Article 18 of international law, which is just made up, by the way. Like, Oda wanted to hype these guys up by giving them this imaginary feat of breaking Article 18, which is something we do not know about, right? Article 18 could be literally anything. And not just that, but to top it all off, Oda says that they have 25 criminal records that were quietly erased. Brother, these guys are so heinous. They had to erase some of their crimes off the logbook. That's nuts. You're telling me people forgot that Rocks D Xebec existed? They erased this man from history? How? It's not like this was 100 years ago. This was 40 years ago. Brother, I feel like everybody should know this guy's name. Like, every time you talk about Gold Roger, somebody in the room should be like, hey, Rocks D Xebec, you know, don't forget about that guy. Or he didn't find the One Piece, but let me tell you, he was a menace. Even the narrator says that even with the future Pirate King Goldie Roger sailing the seas, it would not be an overstatement to refer to this period as the era of rocks. Yeah, Oda is hyping this man to hell and back. It is crazy. So, we go on, and we see a brand new country. Anishi in the New World. Fun stuff here, because back when Elbaf got all those provisions from their allies, people, myself included, were zooming into the ships to see if we'd recognize any of the countries or any of the flags. Didn't get any of it, so I didn't really expect to see any of these allies playing a role later on, but here we have it. It's coming back into play here because Herald is visiting this country, and while he's visiting, he witnesses Cypherpole kidnapping some of the civilians. Herald says that's messed up. The WG cannot just decree everything like that. Let them go. This country gave aid to Elbaf during our famine out of the kindness of their hearts. They're our friends and our saviors. You have the people begging for King Herald to help them, but the Cypherpole operative says, King Herald, watch your tone, right? It's one thing if you help us, but defying us is something else entirely. You applied to be a world government ally. You're only gonna hurt your membership if you attack us. King Herald, though, gets enraged, right? He sees Cypherpole shoot one of the hostages, and King Herald jumps off and destroys the ship. So after this event, we see that Big News Morgans is still doing his thing all the way back then, and he's spewing that propaganda that says that King Herald has been exposed. The Elbaf monarch sinks an innocent battleship. Alliance with the WG is revealed as a ploy, brother. Big News Morgans, man, who is he? You know, this is 42 years ago. Big News Morgans was around for that. We knew that he was around for God Valley, but dude, we're putting him even further back in time now. One day we're gonna get the Big News Morgans reveal, and I swear, it's gonna be crazy. You know, whenever he undoes his Devil Fruit transformation, we're gonna see him, and we're gonna be like, holy crap, it's him. Or maybe we'll have the opposite reaction, where he undoes the transformation, and it's somebody we've seen before. Like, imagine that. Like, imagine it's actually somebody from the Rocks crew, or, you know, somebody we heard about in passing. I don't know, man. Big News Morgans is such a freaking mystery. So, we go down, and we're now back in Elbaf, and we're at Ida's Tavern specifically. We see that Rocks D Xebec has made another stop here to recruit King Herald to his side. But this time, he doesn't just want to recruit Herald, he wants to recruit all of Elbaf. He says, your whole nation should be joining up with me. I'm gonna say it right here. Garp says it later, but it's true. If Herald and Elbaf were to join the Rocks Pirates, I do think they'd be unstoppable. All right, bring Herald to God Valley, have him fight for the team. That would change so much, in my opinion. That scenario right there really makes me wish that One Piece did what if spin-offs. Like, oh, what if Herald joined Rocks, right? We could do so many of those. Like, what if Ace was saved at Marineford? What if Sabo showed up? Or what if Akainu didn't kill Ace and instead it was Garp? Or just silly things like that. We could get really wacky with One Piece spin-offs, man. So, we go on, and we see that Herald says that sooner or later, Elbaf will become a member of the world government. He's not gonna let that Cypherpole incident crumple his overarching plans for Elbaf. Herald, this guy's too good, man. Even though he sees how corrupt the WG is, even though he sees the dark side of the WG, he still wants Elbaf to join because he knows that in the long run, it will be beneficial for the nation. Rock says, did you think that shaving your head was a sign of good faith? Is that a cultural thing you got from somewhere? Herald then follows it up by saying that Garp laughed at him for that too. So yeah, Herald did not bald naturally. Instead, he shaved off his head to show that he's not a violent guy, that he's very sincere. Didn't work, brother. If anything, he looks more scary without the hair. I don't know what it is. Another thing that's funny is that in the next panel of Herald being bald, it does kind of look like he has the gamer headset dent. So it's like, yeah, Herald, that haircut did not do you any favors at all. He just looks more scary, like I said. So, because Herald mentioned Garp, Rocks then talks a little bit about him, which is pretty cool. You know, I love seeing that all of the older generation kind of knows each other. Rock says, Garp, that guy hates the top brass. He'd also be better off as a pirate. And then Herald brings some logic into this, saying, hey, the Marines are a massive organization. Sure, they have corrupt trash in their ranks, but the Navy is a fine army. The average Marine helps save people on a day-to-day basis, which is kind of why I like the Marines too. And that's why I always feel bad whenever we get a fight like Egghead Island, and then you have Marines just walking around on the side with guns and swords, and then you have Luffy jumping around, you know, Buster Call going off, and it's like, dude, these guys are not going to survive. All right, and then you see the, what was it, like the One Piece fan letter episode, and you have like the average Marine at Marineford, and it's like a nightmare battlefield, brother. Like, if you do not have a Devil Fruit at Marineford, you're cooked. Like, the main character in fan letter, he was over here walking around, dodging ice, dodging lava, dodging Whitebeard pirates, pacifista explosions. It's like, yeah, dude, these Marines, they're signing up for a lot. So Herald goes on, and he says that some of the Giants have already joined the Marine rankings, like John Giant. A John Giant name drop in 2025? Brother, what? John Giant. I remember back in like 2010, before Marineford, which might have been a little bit before that. But people were looking at John Giant thinking that he was going to be a goat. Like, John Giant was going to be a monster. And it's funny because we don't have a lot of scenes of John Giant. One of the first scenes we have of John Giant is him standing alongside like 10,000 Marines and he's giving a speech about justice. And it's like, yo, this guy seems like he's it, right? Before we had the concept of admirals or fleet admirals, it's like, yo, John Giant might actually be that guy. And then we go to Marineford and we see Whitebeard just absolutely destroy him with like a single blow. So yeah, shout out to John Giant. I didn't think we'd actually hear about him, but here he is, you know, John Giant, 2025. Love this guy. So we go down and Rock says, yeah, that's terrifying. You know, Giants joining the Marines. How would I want to fight those guys? He doesn't say that. I added that in. Rocks then turns over to Ida and says, hey, Ida, why don't you talk some sense into him? Ida simply says, very snarkily, if Herald was my son, I'd tell him to choose his friends wisely. And it kind of has a double meaning there, because of course he's applying this to the Herald and Rock situation and their weird friendship, but it also applies to Loki and Hyruden, who are brothers, but they're not friends. Beautiful stuff. And I think this will come back and play a bigger role in the next chapter, especially with how this chapter ends. About, oh, like, Herald and Rocks, huh? Maybe this friendship shouldn't be a thing? We'll see. So we cut over to Navy HQ, and we're getting a list of complaints or worries about Giants joining the Marine ranks. One guy says if a Giant were to roll over in their sleep, people could be crushed to death. If just one Giant loses their temper, lives could be lost. Do you really think humans can coexist with such creatures? And that might sound a little bit racy at first, but I think it's genuine worries, right? Like, if I were to work at a job and they're saying, hey, Sai, the next employee that's coming in is 100 feet tall. It's like, oh, that's, horrifying. You know, should I wear an iron suit? Should I do something about this? Like, should I leave? I don't know. Right? Of course, for the world of One Piece, it's a little bit different, but I get their complaints, right? It's not exactly invalid, especially the rolling over in their sleep line, because that's kind of the same thing that happened with Bonnie and Kuma, where one of the villagers said, hey, Kuma, you're so big that if you rolled over, you'd kill Bonnie. So what Kuma did was that he got an iron cage for Bonnie so they didn't crush her. So, like, yeah, even Kuma knows that this is a genuine concern. So we go on, and we see that even though the average Marine has these complaints, they're actually fine with letting Giants join the ranks. They just have certain concerns about them. Sengoku then jumps over to the King Herald topic, and he says that King Herald is an honest man. He's trying to learn from history and change Elbaf. Suru adds in that there's rumors that he's being scouted by Rocks. If that is true, the Navy might not be able to stand against them. And like I said, I love hearing that these characters all kind of know each other. I just wish we could have seen it. Like Garp meeting King Herald, Sengoku being there, Suru being there. Ooh, that would be so nice. But of course, we do not have all the time in the world with One Piece. Right? That'd be like a whole nother chapter for Oda to make. So I get it. We then see Admiral Kong here, and he says, hey, you guys all make good points, but it is what it is. If it were up to me, then making Elbaf a member nation wouldn't be an issue. So yes, even though Kong is an admiral here, even though he does vouch for Elbaf, the higher-ups do not want them. One thing I will say, though, is that I really wish one day we could see Kong, Sengoku, and Suru go all out in a fight. Sorry, I'm a little bit of a meathead. I love watching characters fight all out. Garp got that at Hachinosu. You know, I think for Garp, we got a fantastic showing. I wonder if we'll ever get that same treatment for the other three in this panel. Especially Kong. I feel like Sengoku will get his time in the spotlight soon, alongside Suru, of course, because present day, they are on a ship and they're heading to a certain destination. We don't know where they're going, but I do think Oda is setting up a nice Sengoku Suru action event. So that's nice. But now, what about Kong, right? We've been getting a lot of Kong in flashbacks, right? Especially around Rocks D Xebec and God Valley. But current day, we've literally only seen Kong one time. We've seen Kong one time current day, and that is it. Will we ever see this guy again, current day, and will he ever get a nice showing akin to Garp at Hachinosu? And I would love to ask you guys that question. Do you think we will ever truly see what Kong is all about? So, we're going now, and we're now 42 years in the past, and we get a newspaper reveal, and it says that Shakuyaku of the Kuja pirates has officially quit. The pirates are breaking down. They're crying. One guy says, "It can't be. I set sail because I dreamed of being attacked by her." Brother has his priorities straight. You know, I gotta respect a fellow gooner, man. I like that. I like that dude. We then cut over to Gloriosa, who is now a part of the Rocks Pirates, as well as Big Mom, and they're reading the newspaper as well. And there's a lot to talk about here. First up, we have Labubu Katakuri in the background standing on Big Mom's shoulder. Pretty cool to see that at one point he was a part of Rox's gang. We also see a young Oven and a young Daifuku off to the right. And they look kind of scary, right? They look like monsters out of the Nightmare Before Christmas. They look like caricatures or puppets or just claymation dolls. They don't look human. But yes, Big Mom at this point in time should have a good number of children already out of her oven. And what's funny is that I went down the Big Mom family list, and from this point in the flashback all the way until God Valley, Big Mom has a lot of children. So while she's a part of this crew, she's constantly just getting pregnant and just releasing them into the wild. To give you a prime example, I pulled all of them up on the side here. We have Charlotte Zukoto, who is 44 years old, which would put his birth around the same time Big Mom joined the Rocks Pirates. Another one, let's see here, is Brule. She is 43 years old, so she popped out 1 year after Big Mom joined the Rocks Pirates. Next up, we have Charlotte Broyer, who is 43 as well, just like Brule. Next up, we have Charlotte Noose Torte, who is 42 years old, which is in line with this flashback timeline, so she could be pregnant with this guy right now. Next up is Charlotte Bascarte, who is 42, so he also pops out this year. Next up is Dos Marche, also 42 years old. Big Mom gives birth to 3 people in 1 year. That's kind of crazy. Oh, they're triplets. Oh, I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, these guys are triplets. Yeah, so she pumps 3 out at the same time, and she's still drinking and sailing. That's crazy, dude. Drinking while pregnant, huh? Next up, we have Charlotte Nosoite. He is 41 years old, so Big Mom pops him out a year later. Then we have Charlotte Mash. She is 40. Next up is Charlotte Cornstarch, coming in at 40 years old as well. Charlotte Campo. And then we have Charlotte Lauren. And the last Big Mom kid that she pumped out before or during God Valley was Charlotte Montdior. So yeah, Big Mom, man, she got busy. And what's funny is that I go back to an old SBS where Oda talked about how Big Mom acquired these kids. Somebody asked Oda, "Hey Oda, Big Mom has many ex-husbands, right? How exactly did Big Mom back then pick her husbands? And did she go on a lot of dates?" Oda responded, and he said, being a pirate, she kidnapped men and had kids with them and then threw the men away. Her only goal was to have as many kids from every race as possible. She is truly a frightening woman. I thought that was hilarious. One thing I could have wished we gotten in this flashback, just as a meme, but Big Mom's cage of guys. Like, imagine in the background we have like this cage and there's just a bunch of guys like, "Let me out. No more. I have no more seed to give." Oh God, dude. Big Mom, she's crazy. She's crazy. So, getting back to the dialogue now, Big Mom says, "Hey, do you reckon that Shaki quit so that she could chase a man like you did, Gloriosa?" And that is huge. That is huge. Because last chapter, I was wondering how Gloriosa ended up in the Rocks gang, and I thought that they simply lost a Davy back fight. Not the case. Gloriosa quit being a Kuja pirate member on purpose, willingly, and joined the Rocks Pirates to chase after Roger? Does that make sense? You know, Gloriosa, she's not a slouch, right? So I wonder why she didn't just join the Roger Pirates. Could she not find the Roger Pirates? Did Roger not want her in the crew? Does she like the cat and mouse game? Rawr! And she just wants to chase after Roger like this? It's just a little bit odd. And funny enough, this does bring me back to the current day, the current timeline with Boa Hancock. Because for a while now, I've been saying that Boa Hancock is possibly going to join Cross Guild. A lot of people do not like that idea. A lot of people are saying, hey, like Boa Hancock, she loves Luffy. She wants to chase after Luffy. She wants to go find Luffy. Why would she join that clown? Well, I mean, there's not really logic there, right? I mean, look at Gloriosa, look at Shaki. Shaki likes Rayleigh, Gloriosa likes Roger, and yet they ended up in Hachinosu with Rocks D Xebec. So yeah, I do think in a weird way, this bumps up the stock for Boa joining Cross Guild. Doesn't have to be permanent. It could just be a thing where she's like, hey, I want protection on the seas. I want to find Luffy. I'm just going to join Buggy for the time being. You know, I'm just going to join Buggy until I find that guy. So I could see that being the case, even more so now than ever. And yeah, getting back to the dialogue, Gloriosa says, I honestly can't imagine Shaki getting lovesick. I'd never forgive her if she went after Roger. And I kind of felt the same way. Even though Shaki does like Rayleigh, she wasn't clamoring over Rayleigh the same way Boa clamors over Luffy, or the same way that Gloriosa clamors over Roger. Shaki was more kept, if that makes sense, right? Shaki was more normal about her crush. So I do wonder what her ploy is here. And what's odd is that, you know, this is in the midst of a traitor being here within the Rocks Pirates. So I do wonder if she has a role to play in that. Maybe Shaki was working for the enemy team, or maybe Shaki was simply selling intel to other people about the Rocks Pirates, or maybe she just wanted to be closer to Gloriosa. It could even be a mixture of all the above, plus wanting to go see Rayleigh, right? So yeah, we don't really know what's going through Shaki's head right now. She's just simply coming here to open up a bar, according to this chapter. So the next group we cut over to is, of course, Stussy and Whitebeard. You know, speaking about couples, we see Stussy and Whitebeard, and Stussy obviously is infatuated with Whitebeard, but Whitebeard does not care at all. You know, Whitebeard, he's only got eyes for one woman, and that woman is not her. So we go on, and we see that something absolutely insane is happening. The Kuja pirates have arrived at Hachinosu to drop off the one and only Shaki. Shaki stops by over here, and she decides to open up her bar. She says that no matter where she goes, even though she quit being a pirate, Marines are still going to be after her. So she wants to set up a nice hiding spot, which is here in Hachinosu, right? The den of pirates. Nobody would be able to kidnap her amongst all these evildoers, and she knows that they will protect her because she's beautiful. You have everybody here just kind of simping over her, doing exactly what she wants. She's like, hey, this place smells, we'll clean it. I want to open a store, we'll build one for you. We'll even grow flowers for you too. Yeah, these guys are head over heels in love with Shaki. What's funny too is that one guy even says, hey Shaki, this land it's too dirty for somebody like you. Don't come any closer. And it's like, damn dude, like they'd even go that far, huh? Like, hey, we live in a hellhole, you shouldn't be here. So we see that Rocks and the gang, they realize that something is going on. So he comes down here to investigate the commotion. And that is when we see it. The OG Shaki ripoff bar, and it looks like Rocks and the gang are her first customers. We see Wang Ji, Captain John, Shiki, Don Marlone, Rocks, and even Whitebeard all have hard eyes. And in tandem, they scream out that Shaki is an angel. Can't blame him. You know, like I said, Shaki isn't my favorite girl out of One Piece, but she's attractive, right? She is a good-looking gal. And we get a narrator box that says something interesting. The narrator says the inhabitants of Hachinosu came to covet Shaki as a treasure, an irreplaceable crown jewel. Unfortunately, a treasure is always the inevitable target of theft. Shaki is the reason for God Valley. Devil fruits, of course, were there. People still wanted the devil fruits, but they primarily and originally went there to save Shaki. I love it. Like I said, this is very divisive. I've seen a lot of people not enjoying this plot point, and I understand it, right? You know, it comes down to the fact that a lot of people built God Valley up in a certain way. We knew that devil fruits were there. We have so many heavy hitters going there. So they just expected the treasure to be something more grandiose. Personally, I like this. I like this reveal a lot. I do like this more so than a legendary devil fruit. And the reason why is because, you know, heart eyes aside, I do view this as people going after a Nakama. Right? Like, imagine this is Enid's lobby. Robin is captured, about to go off to the Gates of Justice, and then that is when Luffy and the gang shows up. That's essentially what happened at God Valley. Shaki was being held hostage, she was probably being sold off as a treasure, and then boom, the Rocks pirates showed up, Roger showed up, all to save her. I think that's a massive W. And it's funny because coming off the last chapter, right, we had Roger gooning out, right? Roger had the hard eyes. He couldn't do a single thing with Shaki there. And at the time, I said it wasn't a positive or negative in my eyes, right? I saw Roger gooning out as a nice joke, but it didn't really sway my opinion on Roger. But here we have it. Now that we know that Roger crashed out to save Shaki, I'd say that's a major W for Roger, for Rocks, and everybody here, right? I like the fact that they're willing to throw down to save her. I think that is massive. Yeah, I overall like this plot point. I thought it was solid, and I like how different it was, right? It's not something that I guessed. Although, we could say that it's kind of been in front of us this entire time. Right, with Shaki, I go back to an old SBS. Somebody pulled this up. But in SBS 90, Oda talked about the relationship between Rocks and Shaki, and it's kind of like the Shanks brother thing. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, but back at Marineford, somebody asked Oda if Shanks had a twin brother. What Oda did was that he didn't answer. He redacted it. You know, he intentionally just erased his answer, and because of that, people started speculating that Shanks did have a brother. Here we are, like 10, 15 years later, it's true. Shanks has a brother. So, back in volume 90, which was 7 years ago, somebody asked Oda about the Shaki and Rocks connection, and Oda whistled. He was just like, "Ooh, I don't know anything about that." So it's like, yeah, this has always been the plan. I've been seeing people saying that this plot point came out of nowhere, but that's just not the case. This has always been the thing. You could say that it's unexpected because it was surprising, but Oda always had this planned. Oda always built Shaki as this character. And the thing is, you know, you could go even further back because the SBS in which Oda talked about this, he referenced volume 40, which was many, many, many years prior to Rocks' reveal even. So yeah, Shaki being the main reason for God Valley, it's just been there from the start. It was just not exactly the easiest thing to piece together. Another thing I've been seeing people do is they're trying to downplay Shaki's significance to God Valley, saying, oh, they're there for the devil fruits, right? Rocks doesn't care about Shaki. But that's not what the Marines believe. And hell, even the narrator kind of doesn't believe this either, right? Like, hey, this is an irreplaceable crown jewel. Like, it's inevitable. Somebody would take it. And now going back to the Kuma flashback, 1096, we have the conversation between Garp and Kong says, hey, our reports haven't been verified, but if the danger is real, this will be a disaster. And he's referring to the Rocks crew showing up. And that is when Garp says, I said it would always come back to bite you if you messed with Hachinosu. It's their fault for poking the hive. Garp says, what did you expect? You do not just take the crown jewel of Pirate Island. Of course, they would come to get it back. Referring to Shaki. Yes, the devil fruits are important at God Valley, but they came there for Shaki specifically. That was their number one goal from the rip. So I love it. And one thing I'm questioning now is simply, how did they take Shaki, right? It sounds like Cypher Pole or maybe, the Holy Knights had a part to play in this, but I don't know, man. Like, she has great defense, right? She's on Pirate Island. She's surrounded by the Rocks crew. Who did this? What Cypher Pole agent did this? Was it an admiral? Was it Garling? I have no clue. I cannot wait till the next chapter, mainly because I want to see how the WG plays this off. Like, who comes here, man? And now that we have the reveal that Shaki was the main trigger for God Valley, I go back to the God Valley chapter, 1096, and I'm just looking at it, and it's like, dude, it's so funny looking back at this chapter now because of all of the dialogue. Rocks is apparently the first person that jumps off the ship, and he says, follow me, Rocks pirates. And then we have Whitebeard saying, not so fast, Rocks. Who said I was your follower, you fool? And then we have Stussy pulling at Newgate's little collar, saying, no, not you too, Newgate. And now we know the reason why she's saying that. It's not because Whitebeard is rushing off to get a devil fruit, which, like I said, people speculated to be the Gurgur no Mi. No. He was going off to save Shaki. Whitebeard had no intentions of getting any devil fruits there. And then next up, we have Shiki, who says, I assume it's finders keepers. Which, like I said, people initially thought Shiki was going after a devil fruit, but he has no need for it because he has the float no Mi at that point in time. He's talking about Shaki. And then we have Big Mom saying, they'll be mine. And that is when Kaido says, but you can't do anything with them, Lin. Which, I feel like Big Mom was talking about devil fruits, but it's just funny seeing Kaido say that, like, you can't do anything with them. Because if Big Mom was talking about Shaki, Shaki's a girl, and Big Mom literally cannot really do anything with her. And yeah, it's just so hilarious, brother. Like, Whitebeard goes on and he says, I just know that fool Rocks will lose sight of our goal. We have to be certain first. Shiki says, I'll blow them all up. Big Mom says, let's just steal what we're after and scram. Kaido then says, I hear Roger's on the move. He's the last man I'll let ... Which I do wonder, right? Because at first people are like, oh, Kaido and Roger, they have a grudge because of X, Y, or Z. But now it's like, wait, did they have a grudge over Shaki? Is that it? Were they beefing over Shaki's love and affection? I don't know. But yeah, we then go down to the Roger Pirates dialogue. And Roger, recontextualized now, says that it's been a whole year. Do you know how I felt this entire time? And I think that's interesting because at first, coming off the last chapter, I thought he was talking about Gloriosa. Like, oh, Rocks beat them in a Davy back. They have Gloriosa. Roger wants her back. Not the case. It's probably just because Rocks D Xebec let Shaki get swiped off of his island. So yeah, Roger is saying, hey, do you know how I felt for this whole year? So there's a good chance that Shaki wasn't just kidnapped and taken and they found her right away. No. Shaki's potentially been captured for an entire year, brother. So a lot of big stuff with this. Like I said, this very much recontextualizes God Valley, and I enjoy it. I'm just wondering how the hell Shaki gets captured, bro. That is nuts. And here's the thing. If Shaki really was the main prize that the God Knights were fighting over, it's like, dude, Garling wanted her. The Minmire family wanted her. That dude with the gas mask wanted her. Like, everybody just really wanted Shaki, which makes sense, right? That's the reason why they swiped her, because she is literally a prize. So yeah, this is great. A lot of people are saying this is a Helen of Troy situation where we have two armies fighting each other over one girl. And that's pretty much it. I'm not too familiar with the Helen of Troy story. I just kind of looked at the brass tacks. But yeah, war being waged over a woman. And I agree with it. As a crash out myself, I completely agree with their reasoning. I do unironically think that this makes God Valley better. I just like comrades saving each other, right? I'm a big fan of Enies Lobby. I'm a big fan of Strong World because Shiki kidnapped Nami and then Luffy went to go get her back. Like, I think this is a massive W. And I do wonder if this will parallel anything current day, like maybe Nami or Robin or Boa or somebody that Luffy cares about gets captured, and everybody's like, hey, we gotta go get him. You know, like, guys, put down your swords for a second, hear me out. We gotta go to X, Y, or Z island to topple the Celestial Dragons to get our Nakama back. I think that's major. So, on to the final part of the chapter. We cut over to Marie Joie, and we see that Marcus Mars is taking charge. He says, hey, contact Elbaf. Let them know that we shall accept their admission into the world government under one condition. The Elbaf warriors must kill Rocks. All right. So, that sucks. I really enjoyed the dynamic between Rocks D Xebec and King Herald. And I love that last chapter, Rocks wouldn't even entertain the idea of strong-arming Herald into his crew and taking the Elbaf Devil Fruit. He respects Herald that much. And now here we have it. Marcus Mars is pitting two friends against each other. And now I'm just wondering if King Herald will take the bait. And personally, I feel like he might. You know, King Herald is trying to do what's best for his country, and he knows that Rocks is a villain, right? He will not let Rocks into the castle. Even in the very beginning, he says that Rocks is a little bit of a criminal. So yeah, I could see Herald throwing fists with Rocks D Xebec. But I don't know. You know, I originally was on the train that Herald would snitch out on Rocks, or maybe Herald would feed intel to the world government to get admissed. But now I think he might just fight him. But I mean, I don't think my previous ideas were bad. Like, maybe he does tell the world government about Shaki, and then they're like, hey, okay, we'll maybe take a look at your application one more time. You know, you didn't kill Rocks, but at least you told us about the crown jewel. But even then, we do know that current day, Elbaf is not under world government control. So this does fall through, right? Herald does not successfully kill Rocks D Xebec, or else they'd be a part of the WG right now. So yeah, a lot of interesting things. I think it would be kind of fun if King Herald was at God Valley. Like, I mean, hell, we didn't know that Shaku was there, and now that we have this chapter, we know that she was there. So everything is still kind of up in the air and subject to change. Like, maybe Oda will add in that King Herald was the person who put Rocks down at the very end, or maybe King Herald showed up and he assisted the world government and Roger and etc. But yeah, this is just a little bit painful. It's like watching Naruto versus Sasuke, right? It's like, wait, Naruto, you know, he's still a friend, and Sasuke, wait a minute, he's your best friend. What's going on here? You don't have to fight like this. One thing I do enjoy, though, is that Marcus Mars is seemingly taking the helm, kind of like how Saturn took the helm back at Egget Island. I do wonder if a lot of Elbaf's plot moving forward is all about Marcus Mars. I do think that would be a perfect way to flesh out more of the Gorosei's characters individually, and I kind of go back to the mural, right? Because in the mural, we saw this giant monster bird shooting fire, and I don't think it's Marcus Mars. I think it's like an actual dragon or something in the heaven realm. But now I'm just kind of curious. It's like, wait a minute, maybe that's just a hint that Marcus Mars was going to play a role here in Elbaf, but I don't think so. I don't think Marcus Mars would get that spot in the mural, and the other Gorosei wouldn't, right? But that's just me. Overall, I think this is a great chapter. You know, first time reading it through, I was like, yeah, it's not bad, not bad. But the more I read it, the more I do tend to enjoy it, funny enough. But with that being said, though, guys, let me know what you think about this chapter down below. I would love to hear all your thoughts, your opinions, and of course, in the next couple of days, we will be going through that comment section and reading what you guys have to say. So if you want your comment read in the next video, make sure to drop your comments down below. Because if it's not there, then I'm not going to read it. I mean, I can't read it, right? It wouldn't exist. There's nothing there, brother. But anyways, I don't know what that was. I'll catch y'all later. Hopefully you guys stay safe. Have a great rest of your weekend. And peace out, brother.